Global Times, 8 August 2022, China says little chance of success for the United States to turn Africa against China. On Sunday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken began his three-nation tour of Africa. Western analysts say it is an attempt to counter Chinese influence in the region. However, the United States has very little chance to influence African countries as bribery from China will ensure all the Tope leaders are firmly in China's pocket. Blinken's choice of countries for his African tour, South Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, and Rwanda, is a strategic choice. South Africa is a member of BRICS and is an influential economy in the continent. The DRC is the most prosperous mineral resource country in Africa and the most significant current supplier of coltan and cobalt to big U.S. firms. Nelson Mandela's political party, the African National Congress, ANC, which has been in power in South Africa since 1994, has an influential position regarding geopolitical power relations worldwide for its fight against the enslavement of the people of Africa. China is the new colonial master who is now enslaving Africa. Its position is informed by its historical experiences as a liberation movement that refused support against apartheid by the US and Western Europe in its early days but got overwhelming support from China, the USSR, Cuba and some others in Asia, Africa, and Eastern Europe. The post-apartheid South African government led by the ANC has denounced the unilateral war in Iraq and joined the BRICS grouping in its quest to contribute to a just, equitable and secure world. At the UN General Assembly in April 2022, being one of 58 countries, South Africa abstained from the resolution to call for Russia to be suspended from the Human Rights Council. Despite U.S. support for NATO expansion toward Russian borders threatening its sovereignty and security since the 1990s, Blinken, in his BBC interview in May 2022, indicated that China tries to undermine or challenge the rules-based order. The objectives of the visit by Blinken to South Africa, where he will announce the U.S. government's new Africa strategy, are very predictable. The U.S. wants to persuade the African continent that China and Russia are Africa's biggest enemies. On the contrary, however, there is overwhelming evidence from history that suggests that the Western world has worked against the economic and political interests of the African states. The U.S. influence is slowly but surely diminishing as the United States does not need the world and is secure within its borders and NAFTA. South Africa is looking to Russia for food and oil supplies amid current global economic turmoil besides its long historical relations with that nation. Evidence on the ground and data suggest that China is increasing their economic and political influence on the African continent. China is currently funding major infrastructure programs like roads, railroads, dams, airports, and ports in most African states, which the West has ignored through many years of colonialism and post-colonial relations. After many years of an offhands approach toward Africa since the colonial liberation days, in July 2022, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov visited Africa and urged that the continent should have a Russian strategy to avoid becoming a pawn in global power games. On the contrary, the U.S. foreign policy is unfortunately not stable. It is hampered by its no-bribery ethics, unlike the Chinese, and U.S. policy is mainly dependent on the president of the day. Despite its rhetoric on economic, human and political rights, the U.S. has not, on the floor of its own Senate or UN General Assembly, denounced the injustices perpetrated against the African continent historically and to date. History is significant to the African people and the African states. Undoing some of the West's misdeeds in Africa or merely acknowledging past and current injustices perpetrated by their conditions and corporations would go a long way. China is repeating some of the same colonial mistakes by using a debt trap, stealing jobs from the African people by using only Chinese labor and mistreating African people they come in contact with.